Andy Griffith ruined the most careers in Hollywood. The Andy Griffith Show is the best classic TV show from the 1960s that took place in the middle of the country. So many Americans remember the great group, which included Griffith and other stars like Don Knotts, Francis Xavier, and Ron Howard. The Andy Griffith Show ran for an amazing 8 years with 249 episodes, many Emmy Awards, and good numbers. It finished in 1968. Since then, it's been shown again on old TV networks. In honor of the timeless classic, here are 20 facts about the Andy Griffith Show, including stories from behind the scenes and what happened to the main stars after the show ended. What did we miss? Do you have any other show facts to share? Comment. It was a spin-off. The idea for the Andy Griffith Show came from an episode of the Danny Thomas Show called Danny Meets Andy Griffith, which aired in February 1960 and was the start of the whole show. Griffith got his own show a few months later. Griffith and Knotts were essentially best friends. Griffith and his co-star Don Knotts were friends outside of their roles on the show. Years ago, they met on other shows and became friends. In 2006, when Knotts died, Griffith was by his friend's side. The rock throw in the opening credits wasn't real. During the famous opening scenes of the show, a young Opie throws a rock into a lake. Ron Howard, who was only 6 years old at the time, couldn't do that because he didn't have enough strength. Instead, a production worker who was hiding behind a bush threw the rock into the lake. The show went off the air while in first place. In 1968, at the end of a long and successful run, the Andy Griffith Show was ranked #1 by Nielsen. I Love Lucy and Seinfeld are the only other shows to end on top. Knotts began work on the show without a contract. Even though Barney Fife is one of the most popular characters on TV, it turns out that he wasn't meant to be there for the whole show. Knotts shot the pilot without even having a contract, but the producers were so impressed with his performance as Barney Fife that they gave him a deal the next day. The car was as iconic as the show. On the Andy Griffith Show, the police car was a Ford Galaxy 500. A nearby shop is said to have given the show's makers a new Galaxy for free whenever a new model came out, so the car always looked like it was brand new. Mayberry is a fictional town. Fans will be disappointed to hear that the town of Mayberry, North Carolina, where the show took place, was made up. Some fans think that Mayberry is really based on Griffith's hometown of Mount Airy, North Carolina, but Griffith has always rejected this myth. Even though they denied it, there is a lot of fan art in Mount Airy, like the figure shown here. The theme song was totally different. The theme song, The Fishin' Hole, with its catchy whistling tune, was almost as well known as the show itself. But the original version didn't have whistling. Instead, Everett Sloane sang a version with lyrics. The makers thought that the version with whistling would be better. The show paid tribute to fatherhood. Griffith and Howard later said that the father-son bond they played on the show was meant to honor their own fathers. Griffith even said that the way he acted toward Howard on the show was based on how his dad acted toward him. And Howard claimed that his own father had influenced the way he would depict the connection on the show. It was adjusted for color. From 1960 to 1968, there were a total of 249 episodes. The first 159 were in black and white. Because of changes in how most TV shows were made at the time, the last 90 episodes of the show were in color. Andy was supposed to be the only jokester. The original idea for the show was that Andy would get all the jokes, but after a few shows, the show's creators decided that Barney would be a better way to make people laugh. At that point, the show was changed so that Andy was the setup man and Barney was the funny man. How did Andy Griffith break his hand? Fans who watched the second season of the show might remember a story in which Sheriff Taylor broke his hand while fighting crime. In fact, Griffith broke his hand while he was off camera. He's said to have punched a wall on the set when he was angry. There was another spin-off series. After the show finished in 1968, many of the secondary characters came back for the spin-off show Mayberry RFD. Even though Griffith wasn't on the show, it ran on CBS for 3 full seasons before it was dropped. What did Andy Griffith do beyond the show? Andy Griffith is best known for playing himself in the popular show of the same name. However, he also had a long and successful career on Broadway, where he won a Tony Award. He also played the main role in Matlock, which was another TV show. In 2012, when he was 86 years old, he died. The series led to Ron Howard's long-lasting career. After the Andy Griffith Show finished in 1968, Ron Howard went on to star in another famous show, Happy Days. In the past few decades, Howard has become one of the best directors in Hollywood. He won the Best Director Oscar for A Beautiful Mind in 2001. Knotts had a great television career. Before he died in 2006, Don Knotts went back to TV to play Ralph Furley, the owner on the show Three's Company. In later years, TV Guide put Knotts on a list of 50 best stars of all time. What's Barney's middle name? Knotts would probably give you a few different answers if you asked him what his character's given name was. On some shows, he said it was Oliver, and on others, he said it was Milton. Barney Fife is one of the most memorable characters on the show, even though the writers couldn't agree on a single given name for him. The relationship between Andy and Barney changed. Andy and Barney were written as cousins in the first season. The idea was soon taken out of the show, and by the end of that season, it was clear that the writers didn't like it. Barney's exit. Barney Fife is such a popular figure that some fans, not the real fans of course, might not know that he didn't stay with the show for the whole time. Don Knotts was a full-time cast member on The Andy Griffith Show from its start in 1960 until 1965, when he left to go into movies. On the show, the reason for his departure is that he began working as a detective in Raleigh, North Carolina. Even though he had new responsibilities, Knotts kept making guest appearances for the rest of the show's run. He even showed up in the first episode of the spin-off Mayberry RFD. Originally, only 5 seasons. Griffith and Knotts both signed 5-year contracts for The Andy Griffith Show. Knotts started looking for work elsewhere during the 5th season and finally got a 5-year deal with Universal Pictures. Griffith told Knotts that he wanted to keep the show going for another 3 years. Knotts couldn't get out of his deal with Universal, so he had to quit the show. Helen Crump. If you've ever wondered why Anita Corsett's character, Helen Crump, has such a terrible name, it's because she was only supposed to be in 1 episode at first. But when the directors saw how well she got along with Griffith on screen, they decided to make her a regular part of the group. No chemistry. The first choice for Andy's on-screen girlfriend was Ellie Walker, who was played by Eleanor Donahue. She stayed on the show for 1 season, but then she has to be let out of her 3-year deal because she didn't like Griffith. On the other hand, Griffith and Anita Corsett, Helen Crump, were an easy-to-believe pair, both on and off film. An adorable bromance. Barney sometimes calls Andy Ange on the show, which is pretty cute when you think about how Knotts called Griffith by that name in real life. A real friendship between guys. No live audience. Andy Griffith wanted the players to keep their attention on their roles and for Mayberry to feel like a real town. To do this, they shot the whole show on location instead of on a soundstage, like most comedy shows, and instead of a live crowd, they added a laugh track after the fact. Griffith had other work besides the show. He played the lead role of Andy Taylor on The Andy Griffith Show and Ben Matlock on Matlock. Dean Hargrove made this mystery-themed law drama for TV. He won a People's Choice Award in 1987 for his role as Matlock. Working with Andy Griffith. There are a lot of stars whose careers went on after working with Andy Griffith. Some of the names that come to mind are Ron Howard, Don Knotts, Rance Howard, Charles Grodin, and Tom Hanks. Working with Andy Griffith had a lot of different effects. Some artists' parts got smaller, and others couldn't get work in the future because they had worked with him. Others just didn't reach their full potential because he didn't help them or push them